The first time I realized my husband had locked me out of my own home, I was still wearing the wedding ring he had placed on my finger 48 hours earlier. They want to know whether I screamed, whether I begged, whether I broke down on the porch. I didn't. I stood there with 2 grocery bags cutting into my fingers and stared at the key that suddenly wouldn't turn. 2 days after I said I do in a little church outside Nashville, Evan had changed the locks while I was buying groceries. Then he answered my call and told me calmly, "Don't come back tonight, Claire." Asked why. He said, "Because you don't own this house." He thought that sentence ended the conversation. He had no idea it was the moment he gave me the first piece of evidence I would need to take my life back. But the locked door was not the real story. It was only where the truth became impossible to ignore. My name is Claire Bennett. I was 25 when this happened. 48 hours earlier, Evan and I had been standing beneath white flowers while 60 people watched us promise to build a life together. Evan was 32, successful, charming, and unusually attentive. He remembered how I took coffee. He knew my mother had died 3 years earlier and made sure a small photo of her was placed beside my bouquet. When he slipped the ring onto my finger, he whispered, "You're home now." I believed him. That sentence mattered because, growing up, home had never felt permanent. My father worked long shifts and taught me to be independent, but after my mother died, I learned to stop expecting people to stay. Evan seemed different. He planned dates weeks ahead, answered every message, and talked about our future as if it were already written. My friends loved him. My father tolerated him. I married him because I thought I had finally found the place where I could stop being careful. There had been small things, though. Evan always called the property my house, even after we became engaged. Whenever I corrected him, he laughed and said, "Legally, sure. Emotionally, it's ours." I never pressed him. 6 weeks before the wedding, he asked for a copy of my driver's license because he said the insurance company needed it. I sent it without thinking. A few days later, he asked me to sign a stack of papers and told me they were routine wedding and insurance documents. I remember asking whether I should read them. He kissed my forehead and said, "Trust me." I did. That was my mistake. The day after the wedding, while looking for wrapping paper in the hallway closet, I found a folder with my full name printed across the front. Inside were property documents, bank pages, and something that looked like a company registration. I only read the first page before Evan appeared behind me. His face changed. "Where did you get that?" he asked. I said, "It has my name on it." He took the folder from my hands and told me to forget I'd seen it. I should have opened it again. Instead, I trusted my husband. The next afternoon, I went to the grocery store because Evan wanted flowers for the kitchen table. I bought milk, bread, strawberries, and the flowers. When I returned, my key stopped in the lock. I tried again. Nothing. I knocked. No answer. Called Evan. He picked up and sounded completely calm. "Don't come back tonight." I asked what happened. "You need to stay somewhere else." "Why?" said. He paused. "Because I found out you're asking questions about things that don't concern you." I felt the grocery bag slip from my hand. "I'm your wife," he replied. "Exactly. So act like it." Then he hung up. I stood on the porch looking at the flowers, and for the first time since I met him, I felt afraid of the person on the other side of the door. I drove to my friend Melissa's apartment. I wasn't ready to explain what I had found to anyone that night. I opened my laptop and searched the county property records. I expected to find Evan's name. Instead, I found mine. The name on the property record was mine. Not Evan Bennett. Not his company. I stared at the screen until Melissa asked what was wrong. I had never bought a house. I had never created a company. Yet the county record showed a company registered under my name, and that company had acquired Evan's house 6 weeks before our wedding. Called him. He answered on the second ring. "Where are you?" he asked. I asked why my name was on the property record. Silence. Then he said, "You're looking at something you don't understand." I asked him to explain. He said, "Come home tomorrow and we'll talk." I laughed because he had just told me not to come home. "You changed the locks." His voice hardened. Because I needed you to calm down. That was the first time I heard him sound like a stranger. The next morning I went to the house. A moving truck was parked in the driveway. Two men were carrying boxes through the garage. One of them was holding the wooden box my father had given me when I turned 18. Where are you taking that? Asked. He said Evan told them to put my belongings in storage. Called Evan. Stop touching my things. He replied. They're being stored safely. You locked me out and now you're removing my belongings. He said. You left voluntarily. Before I could answer, an officer arrived because Melissa had called the police. Evan came outside and told them I had become emotional after a disagreement and left the house on my own. The officer asked me whether I had signed anything transferring the property. Said no. He looked at the county record and then at me. You need legal advice, he said. I called Rachel Morgan, an attorney who had handled my mother's estate. I sent her the property record. She called me back. Claire, freeze your credit. Asked why. Because if your name is on a company you didn't create, we need to know what else was done using your identity. I did it immediately. Rachel searched the public filings. She found 3 financial inquiries I didn't recognize and a business account opened under the company name. She also found a loan secured against the house. The amount was $185,000. Evan doesn't own this debt. Yes, Rachel said. Not on paper. Felt sick. The house wasn't a gift. It was a shield. Rachel told me not to contact Evan again. She wanted the documents connected to the company. I told her about the folder. She became very quiet. Where is it? She asked. I said it was inside the house. Then we need to get it before he knows what you're doing. That evening Evan called. His voice was soft again. Claire, I'm sorry. I panicked. I asked him why my name was on his property. Because I wanted to protect our future. From what? Asked. He didn't answer. Instead he said, come back. We can fix this privately. Rachel had warned me not to go. Said no. Evan's voice changed instantly. If you make this legal, you will regret it. Then he hung up. Later Rachel called me with another discovery. The property had not simply been transferred into my company. It had been transferred for $1. The deed contained a signature that looked like mine. Rachel compared it with my driver's license and old estate paperwork. Claire, she said, this isn't your signature. My hands went numb. Someone had signed my name before I became Evan's wife. And suddenly the question wasn't why my husband locked me out. The question was what he had been planning before he put a ring on my finger. I didn't know yet how much worse it would become. Rachel met me at her office the next morning with a stack of certified records. There are 2 problems, she said. First, your signature was used without your permission. Second, Evan had a reason to move the property before your wedding. The house had become the safest asset he had. The lender required the new owner to have clean credit and no connection to Evan's existing debt. Had both. My stomach turned when Rachel explained it. He didn't need you to love him, she said. He needed your name. I remembered the flowers, the vows, and the way he cried during our first dance. Then I remembered the folder, the driver's license, and the sentence he had used when he changed the locks. You don't own this house. Maybe that was exactly what he wanted me to believe. The company registered under my name had a bank account. Money had moved through it before the wedding. Evan had been using the account to make payments connected to his company. The statements were being sent to an email address I didn't recognize. Rachel asked whether Evan had ever asked to use my email for paperwork. I remembered him saying, your inbox is too messy. Let me organize the important stuff. I had given him access months earlier. I felt embarrassed, but Rachel stopped me. Don't blame yourself. He built trust before he used it. That sentence stayed with me. It explained why everything had felt normal. The warning signs weren't hidden because they were invisible. They were hidden because I had trusted the person standing beside them. The notary agreed to meet us. She remembered Evan bringing documents into her office 6 weeks before the wedding. She remembered him saying his fiancée had already signed everything and was running late. She admitted she should have required my presence for one document, but Evan had convinced her the signature had been completed earlier. She still had a security recording from the office hallway. When the video arrived, we watched Evan walk into the office alone with the folder I had seen in the closet. He stayed for 19 minutes. He left carrying the same folder. The timestamp matched the date on the deed. The evidence was no longer something I felt in my stomach. It was something other people could see. Then the notary mentioned something that changed everything. Before Evan left, he had received a phone call. She couldn't hear the other person, but she heard Evan say, "She'll be out of the house by Friday." I looked at Rachel. Friday was the day he changed the locks. It wasn't an emotional reaction. Had been scheduled. He hadn't locked me out because we had a fight. He had locked me out because his plan required me to be gone. Rachel requested the lender's records. The loan was due for review that same week. If I stayed away and stopped asking questions, Evan could finish the transaction without me noticing. That evening, Evan called again. Put the phone on speaker. "Claire, please come home," he said. "I know I handled things badly." I asked him about the deed. Silence. I asked him about the company. Silence. Then I asked, "Who told you I would be out of the house by Friday?" His breathing changed. "I don't know what you're talking about." I said, "You should have told me the truth before we got married." He became angry. "You don't understand the pressure I was under. So you used my name. I was going to fix it." "After what?" I asked. He didn't answer. Then he said something I will never forget. "You were supposed to be my wife, Claire. You were supposed to trust me." I realized then that he wasn't sorry for what he had done. He was angry that trust had stopped working as a weapon. The lender froze the new transaction after Rachel reported the documents. Evan's attorney contacted us before noon. He wanted a private settlement. Rachel refused. Then she showed me one final document. It was an email Evan had sent to the lender before our wedding. In it, he described me as a clean-name spouse who can hold the property temporarily. I read the sentence twice. I wasn't his partner. I wasn't his future. I was an instrument in a plan he had already built. And now that plan was collapsing. I wasn't saving a marriage anymore. I was saving myself from him. The court hearing happened 3 weeks later. Evan arrived with an attorney. He claimed the property transfer had been part of our marriage plan and that I had misunderstood the documents. Rachel presented the deed, the bank records, the security footage, and the email describing me as a clean-name spouse. Then the notary testified. She said Evan had told her I had signed the document, even though I had never entered her office. The judge asked Evan why my signature appeared on a document I had never seen. Evan looked at his attorney. He had no answer. The court froze the property and referred the forged documents for criminal investigation. The lender withdrew. The business partner's lawsuit continued. Evan's entire plan collapsed in one morning. The divorce was finalized months later. Evan agreed to give up any claim to the property and repay the money he had moved through the company. I never asked for the maximum punishment. I wanted distance, documentation, and a legal record that could not be rewritten later. I changed my phone number, closed every account Evan had touched, rebuilt my credit, and moved into an apartment across town. The kitchen was narrow, the bedroom barely fit my furniture, but the first night there, I locked the door from the inside and realized I could breathe. No one was going to tell me when I was allowed to come home. A month after the divorce, my father came to help me unpack. He carried boxes up 3 flights of stairs and complained about the elevator before admitting the stairs were easier. While unpacking, he found the wedding ring in a small envelope. He didn't ask why I had kept it. He simply held it for a moment and said, "You know what your mother used to tell me?" I shook my head. She said a person can give you a house, a car, a ring, anything. But nobody gets to give you your worth. Those words sounded different that day. Evan had tried to turn my identity into collateral. He had taken my trust and treated it like paperwork. But he had failed to understand something my parents had spent years teaching me. What belongs to you is not always what someone hands you. The county eventually restored the property record and removed my name from the fraudulent company structure. The lender withdrew every claim against me. My credit was clean. My name was mine again. I opened the drawer where I had kept the wedding photographs. I took out one picture. Evan was smiling at the camera, his hand around my waist, while I stood beside him believing I had just found my forever. I put it away with the rest and understood something I hadn't understood when I was standing outside that locked door. Sometimes the most important thing a person can lose is not a relationship. It's the version of themselves that trusted the relationship more than their own instincts. A year later I bought a house. It wasn't impressive, but it had a porch, a little kitchen, and a front door painted the color I had always wanted. I stood outside for a few seconds before opening it. I thought about that afternoon 2 days after my wedding. The grocery bags, the flowers, the key that suddenly didn't work. Evan had believed the lock gave him power. He thought if he controlled the door, he controlled whether I belonged inside. He never understood that locking me out gave me a reason to look beyond the door. I walked into my new kitchen and placed the flowers I had bought that morning into a glass vase. They had been the last thing I carried from the old life before Evan locked me out. I set them on the counter and laughed. Not because what happened had been funny. It wasn't. I laughed because the same woman who had stood outside that house holding flowers was standing inside a home that nobody had given her and nobody could take away. I understood the thing Evan never expected. I didn't fight to get back into his house. I built a life where I never needed his door again. And that was the part he could never lock me out of.